Mr. Timuel Black, what an honor to have the 100-year-old centenarian, the historian, the author, the lecturer here in the studios of the Chicago Sun-Times. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and I'm honored to have this opportunity.
Especially on this day, because today is what?
December 7th, 1918. I consider a famous day in history because I was born.
Let's start with where you were born and raised. Tell us where you were born and raised and what it was like during the times that you grew up in.
I was born in Birmingham, Alabama. At that time, racial segregation was so terrible and obvious that many people wanted to escape that. In World War I, many Europeans had also left Europe to come to America, and their experience they learned to organize unions in the urban areas of Europe. So the industrialists and the commercialists sent agents south to get the same kind of skills at a much cheaper price.
African Americans.
African Americans primarily. Given the conditions of the white South, those agents were able to convince people like my father to come north.
So you went to a very famous high school and had some very famous classmates. Tell us about that.
I went originally to Inwood High School.
Okay.
Then, because of segregation and anger and because of my dad's attitude about race, he and the principal had some differences. And I forged my mama's name and then graduated and went to Wendell Phillips. Best thing I could ever have done. The first person that I didn't know was a young man who became relatively well known across the world. His name was Nathaniel Cole, later becoming Nat King Cole.
And he was a classmate of yours.
Another young man who became well known was a young man from Little Rock, Arkansas, whose name was John H. Johnson, the founder of Ebony magazine.
Take us through your work in the 70s that led up to the election of the first black mayor of Chicago, Harold Washington.
You see, in the segregated area, it was a demand be registered and go to the polls. Fathers and mothers transferred that responsibility to their children. We tried to run Harold, but the black aldermen and much of the population felt obligated to the establishment.
Okay.
He was the candidate running against Jane Byrne, but he lost. Harold, at that time, was a very prominent congressman. So, having lost one time, he ran the first time, but he was in office, he didn't lose his seat. We had to convince him after we had met his demands. Harold was not interested in running for that because he was so popular. He told us, and I say again, me included, if you register 100,000, 200,000 new voters and raise $1 million, I'll consider it. We unified George Johnson, John Johnson, and other wealthy, and they met regularly, and they promised a donation of more than $1 million. With that voter registration and that acquisition of financial support, which was way beyond what Harold had demanded, thinking he was going to escape, I called him and said, "What you gonna do now, man?" He said, "I guess I gotta run."
Tell us your involvement with Mr. Barack Obama.
He didn't aspire to the presidency publicly, immediately.
Okay.
He came with a desire to move ahead. And he called Timuel Black one day and said he was going to run for Congress against Bobby Rush.
Ooh.
And I said, "No, I can't support you in doing that." Because about my relationship with Bobby Rush.
Exactly. That was a very controversial run for him, and he lost.
And he did lose overwhelmingly. But then, because his ambitions and his skill, he decided to run for the U.S. Senate.
And the rest is history, from the U.S. Senate to the presidency.
To the presidency.
How does it feel to be 100 as you look back over the last 100 years, as you look back over your life, sir? What rises to the top for you, and what is it that you have to say to those who you are leaving this legacy to?
I say, as my grandparents must have had it in their spirit, I'm so glad the trouble don't last always. Oh my Lord, what must I do? That attitude, which regardless to the negative that you may face today, tomorrow is another day. And so be prepared. And not only be prepared for yourself, but feel a sense of obligation to others. And so throughout almost my whole lifetime, as my daddy said to my mama, "Mattie, pay the rent, buy plenty of food," and then he laughingly said, "and get plenty of toilet paper."
Plenty of toilet paper. Get ready for it.
If you have those items,
yes,
you can be as independent as you wish.
Well, Mr. Black, we thank you so much for surmounting the impossible. We thank you so much for the amazingly miraculous of your life. And we just wish you many, many more years.
I hope that I can be around, and I've been inspired to continue by seeing young people like you make the world a better place.